Welcome to the NanoCap podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of NanoCap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of NanoCap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week we have David Crean, Chief Business Officer of MediciNova, stock ticker MNOV. MediciNova is a biopharmaceutical company that acquires and develops small molecule therapeutics for the treatment of diseases with unmet medical needs. David, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So, David, I was going into your history a little bit, and it seems like you kind of grew up near the Great Lakes region, up in Buffalo, Toronto area. So when you finally finished your PhD, what was the thought process that you finally got to move out to Santa Barbara? Were you just ecstatic? Were you pumped? And then also to kind of add on top of that is that a lot of people who get a PhD, especially in kind of the fields you're in, tend to get stuck in academia forever.
Yeah. And
research forever. And so obviously you had some sort of kind of entrepreneurial spirit too, kind of in you, some little bit of business spirit and stuff. And so, yeah, tell me about just kind of the thought process of all of your classmates are either going to go work into some medical practice or research forever in academia, and you're going out west to start something new. Tell me about more about that.
I'm glad you picked up on that, Will. I did a postdoc, a 2-year postdoc up in Toronto, Canada. And, I had to go through that after that postdoc of thinking, all right, what do I do after this? Do I go into academia, that kind of that tenure track position role of having to write grants to basically fund your position? Or do you want to continue down that tenure track position, or do you want to go on to the dark side, if you will? And, my interest was not to get into academia. Yes, I was really proud of what I was doing in terms of getting the doctorate and understanding the science, but I had the entrepreneurial spirit of getting into the commercialization of drug development and, going into building companies, and at least internally as well as externally, not only through research and development internally, but externally through mergers, acquisitions, business development. And so I was recruited out into industry and away from academia. And, that's what got me started. And there was an opportunity that came up. And, if you draw a straight line between Toronto and Santa Barbara, that was probably the furthest point away from Toronto. And I loved Toronto. I think it was just fabulous country in Canada, and just a fabulous city. But I just had the opportunity of getting out and starting in the commercialization aspect of life sciences. And that's what got me started. So I went, it certainly had a nice blend of research and development experience from my academic days, but then really went into, how do you develop drugs and how do you commercialize them for the greater good? And so that's what got me started. So I'm glad you picked up on that. Thanks so much for asking.
Yeah, and your first job out of college and kind of it seems like one of your pivotal moments was at, I'm going to say it out, Miravent Medical Technologies.
That's correct.
What stage was it at, like when you first started there, and how did you leave the place? And kind of what lessons did you learn there, kind of going from the very beginning to the end type of thing?
Yeah, when I first came into the company, it was a privately held company that were continuing to raise money. And I don't recall the number, what employee number I was, but it certainly was an early stage company focused on oncology, the study of, for solid tumor treatments. It was a company focused on treatments, not on diagnostics. And I was asked to come in and to develop a program with a platform technology called photodynamic therapy. It was a drug or a technology that combined the use of light sensitive drugs and lasers for the treatment of solid tumors. And I was asked to take that technology and to transform it or utilize it for the treatment of eye diseases, in particular neovascular related diseases or diseases of the eye that had, extra vessels, extra, blood vessels, and in particular macular degeneration. So that was the role that I was recruited in for to develop, and soon thereafter, the company went IPO. They became public, and soon after, the company developed through various stages of clinical development through phase 2 or phase 3, and I was there for about a total of 6 years. So the company continued to progress, and I think it was there for about maybe 5 or 6 years. And at that point, I got recruited from away from Santa Barbara down to Orange County to Allergan, which is a major biopharmaceutical company, to help manage business development and corporate development associated with one of its pearls, compound botulinum toxin or Botox. So I thought it was a great opportunity for me to leave kind of that early stage biopharmaceutical medical technology company of Miravant Medical Technology to a larger biopharmaceutical company.
Yeah, and in between there, I believe you got an MBA also.
I did. I'm a consummate educational professional, so I love education. I'm a big believer in it. It also trickles down to my children as well. But it's an important skill set to have, not only the science piece, but then also the business piece. So it's a pretty powerful combination in the work that I do to have both the science and the business. It's very, very powerful.
So we're going to fast forward a bit then from the kind of beginning of your career, just the building blocks of like the perfect biotech CEO investor with the actual PhD, and then got to work at a startup, from startup to going IPO, then got an MBA, then got to work at a large company like Allergan to see how it works at scale. Kind of tell me about kind of what your journey was like for the next decade or so, as you obviously were probably attending conferences, learning about new breakthroughs, trying to be valuable to different companies as you advise and help them raise money, help them invest, and you've kind of done the whole gambit from A to Z, and what it was like when you all of a sudden, through all these different things, heard about MediciNova for the first time, where you go, okay, I hear a pitch a day about a different company, but this sounds different. What kind of excited you about MediciNova? And tell me about like how you first heard of it and what your thoughts were.
Yeah, thanks for asking. What's such a great question. What interested me about MediciNova was I think they're going after some really difficult and challenging diseases, which has a significant number of unmet medical needs. And our core focus is on ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, where there's really nothing really available for patients and advocates and their families out there. And they're really making a lot of great strides in that area, not only on ALS, but some other neurodegenerative conditions, for example, for progressive multiple sclerosis. So, so from the technology standpoint, and going after those market needs in certain markets, we're certainly a very, very big interest of mine. And then their approach of using one of two drugs, these oral bioavailable molecules, MN166 and MN001, where they had a lot of data on them from a Japanese pharmaceutical partner, Crean, pharmaceuticals out of Japan, and there was a lot of data behind them, although they weren't tested in the U.S. or the Europe, and they actually are considered new chemical entities in the U.S. and Europe. So they had proof of concept, safety, and efficacy data on these in different indications. So you had compounds that were basically de-risked from that standpoint, and then having some proof of concept data going after very significant unmet medical needs in conditions, whether that was in neurodegenerative conditions and or fibrotic and cardiometabolic disease. That really interested me. And then this idea of having just a differentiated business model, of which which MediciNova has. Look, they're, for the time that I've been with them which has been 4 years, they've never burned more than $12 to $13 million a year is their annual burn rate. They have a core focus on, a couple of those indications where what I mean by core is that's where they're spending their P&L, their, the cash in on their income statement. And a number of those other programs that they have going on are called non-core, meaning they have government grants and other non-dilutive grants that they're spending, or through academic affiliations, academic institutions that those institutes are spending money on it and running trials. And the only thing that MediciNova is doing is providing drug. And so that is very unique business model to have. So it allows them to focus on the key things and still allows them to, do other things, but they don't have to sort of divert their time, their attention, or their money on some other trials. And so if you look at that, that's a very unique program, a very unique approach to doing drug development. And how many, advanced late stage companies have that type of approach where they're only spending $12 to $13 million a year to advance their pipeline. So there's 11 different sort of indications or trials going on. They're focused just on a couple high priority ones. ALS probably is the real core focus and very large unmet medical need, and they're doing it very, very differently. And that's what really interested me. And at the end of the day too, it comes down to team, and they're just great people to work with. So that's what interested me.
And so to kind of phrase it back to you, is it partially an idea that like you see a novel new idea get approved in a country outside the US, and you think, okay, this country has, like, you're thumbing through the FDA filings of a Japanese pharmaceutical. You go, this is a novel approach. And then you're like, okay, if the Japanese FDA has approved it, that means the US FDA, more likely than not, it should be able to get through all the hurdles and hoops that you have to jump through to get approved there. Is that some of the thought process behind it?
Certainly, I think that's some of the thought process, but it's not entirely. Sometimes you have to identify molecules that may have different types of mechanisms. Some of those molecules that we were considering, and look, I wasn't a part of that. That was part of, the current president and CEO, Yuichi Iwaki, and he's been with the company for 25 years. When this all came about, they identified that there were, these very unique compounds that were actually targeting different types of indications. And they noticed that there were different indications or different pathways and mechanisms of action that it could be used for tackling other diseases. And that the company decided to explore that for example, for neurodegenerative conditions because of its unique mechanism of action, or to go after fibrotic or metabolic disease in the case of the other compound. And so, sometimes you have to look at, various mechanisms of action on compounds. And by doing that, you can explore, different indications. So.
So when you joined on as Chief Business Officer, which is a unique title, but it makes sense with kind of what your background is, what was your kind of main way you thought you could add value? Was it, okay, I can help with financing, I can help find money out there, I can help with that type of thing, I can help bridge the gap between the finance and the scientific findings, and I can do that kind of communication? Kind of where did you think that you're like, okay, this is definitely where I should spend my time because my time will be spent the best
Yeah, generally when, chief business officers or CBOs get involved with companies, a lot of what we do is not only on the corporate finance side, looking to see how are we going to, finance the company strategically, working very closely with the CEO and the CFO, but we also are working on strategy. What is our corporate vision? And then also on corporate business development as well as corporate development, looking at mergers, acquisitions, looking at partnerships. You know, how are we going to advance our pipeline? Are we going to do it internally? Are we going to do it externally? Are we going to be, trying to advance this through business development partnerships? So, in general, a chief business officer has to sort of incorporate and amalgamate a lot of that through those particular sort of actions and constructs.
One of the things you mentioned earlier is that you were attracted to MediciNova just by like kind of the interesting business model that they had. So as you're setting up all that stuff as the chief business officer, how much of it is like pattern matching and you going, hey, I've done this with 20 different other companies like this. This is kind of the basic steps on how to get from A to B. And how much of you are like, oh, okay, we're going to have to zig where we normally zag because this business model is so different. And that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, many business models that I've run across haven't really done this before. A lot of them tend to be not very capitally efficient. They tend to spend money like drunken sailors, if you will. And I think there's a lot of headways in today's markets, for example, where companies are being forced to be more capitally efficient because they're having difficulty they're having difficulty fundraising, and so they're being forced to be more capitally efficient. And I think it's a good thing for the industry. Where in this case, MediciNova has always been sort of practicing that. And they've been practicing that for a number of years, ever since I've been involved with the company for the last 4 years. They've been always very capital efficient, and they're working with close to $40 million on their balance sheet, which gives them, over 3 years runway. So that's a great, enviable position to be in, where many biotechs and life science companies are generally, operating with 6 months of cash, or certainly less than a year of cash, and that's not a really great place to be, especially if you're having to go out raise capital. It really puts a lot of strain on the company to operate and to go forward. So, it's a nice position to be in. But what I've seen in my over 3 decades of being in the life science healthcare space is many companies are not as capitally efficient as they could be, and so I think it's a great lesson to learn from, and for others to sort of take note of, and how you should try to run a company. You need to prioritize. Number one, you need to watch every dollar in and out that you're bringing in and that you're going out. You need to try to do things in a capital efficient manner, meaning certain things you can outsource. You don't need to do everything in a very expensive way, or maybe you don't need to do it today. Some of these things you really need to use your capital in a very wise manner.
Yeah, no, this sounds like wise words from someone who's been there before and does not have the ego attached that it's exciting that you're now running a business and this and that you're very sober-minded about it all. So as you said, this company's been around for a while. What gets you out of bed in the morning today? What gets you excited about the company? Where do you see it in 3-5 years? And kind of what gets you excited that like this is what you want to be spending your time with, because this is really going to be the biggest impact?
Yeah, the aspect of MediciNova that gets me excited, it comes down to the key catalysts right now, and that's on the ALS program. We're getting, it's very, very imminent, but we're getting close to our final enrollment randomization and getting those final patients in. And from there, and that we should be having that probably, if not this week, certainly I think it's next week. And that's a key catalyst for the company, just given the high unmet medical need. And once you get those patients in, and it's a 1-year follow-up on those programs for those patients, and that's really dictated by the European EMEA. But the FDA is actually interested in has agreed to a 6-month follow-up, and there's sort of can be a 6-month look at that data, and the FDA is very interested and flexible in working with companies who are working in this space of the ALS community. And so if the data does show at the interim analysis that that it is doing something, that it has great safety, that has some level of efficacy that may warrant a early filing of an NDA, MediciNova will certainly pursue that pathway. So that's what gets me excited. The second catalyst is a program. It's a phase 2 program with a second compound, MN001, where they're seeing an impact on triglycerides. They run a study on hypertriglyceridemia in type 2 diabetics. And this is an exciting area, as you know, with a lot of the hype around GLP-1s in the cardiometabolic space for weight loss and for diabetes. So what we're seeing, and there's been 6 or 7 trials with MN001 where it's shown consistently to impact triglycerides. And so if, in fact, our data on that particular trial, and it's a 6-month trial, shows, similar benefits to patients, I think that's going to be another interesting catalyst for the company, and which will garner a lot of interest on potential partnerships to come in and want to take a look at that. Those are programs which will drive a lot of partnering interest in the area, and so those are the things that get me really exciting. And then just working with the people and trying to develop high quality drugs and impacting some indications and some diseases, to help all patients. That's what gets me fired up and gets me out of bed each and every day. So I love working with them, working with the company, and ultimately to drive impact for patients worldwide.
Well, David, thank you so much for all the work you have done. If people want to hear a little bit more about MediciNova, what you guys are working on, where should I send my followers and listeners?
You can have them contact me at Crean at MediciNova.com. Certainly, you can also have them get a hold of me through LinkedIn. That would be great. And awesome. You can also do it at info@MediciNova.com. That comes to me as well.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right.
Well, for those of you still listening, remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute, therefore, by Nano Podcast or its affiliates. all liability for any individuals